Alrighty. Welcome to the Wild Creatrix Cafe. I'm your host, Del Rubio, author, coach, and Wild Creatrix, and a lover of deep and delightful conversations, which I know we're going to have today with Santari. And thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
And in our conversation today, we're going to be talking about epic storytelling. So I'm really excited about this just because the power of story, I think most of us get how important stories are in terms of so many things. The stories that we create about ourselves, the stories that are possible. And I know that with today's guest, Santari Green, a friend and colleague of mine, whom I'm just so thrilled to have and introduce to you. He's a life coach, a nutrition coach, a genius writing coach, and author also. He's magical, amazing writing. He has extensive experience in assisting people to realize their dreams and discover their own empowerment. And that's just such a tame introduction, I feel, because I know how big, how deep, how amazing, how delightful are the experiences that are possible. I've had them myself with you, so welcome, Santari.
Thank you very much. I myself, I'm looking to go on this epic journey. Oh, we all.
Yes, yes. So I wonder if you could just start us off with, why tell your story in the first place, and why make it an epic story?
Well, that's a good question, good opener. Some people have various ideas about what their story might look like. And other people have absolutely no idea that they have a story whatsoever. So if I'm looking to see what it is my story is all about, I'd have to sit down with a piece of paper and start to idly jot down a few ideas. Because that to me is when you sort of like get some insights. It's not like you have this great big broad color vision understanding that this is your life and this is what it's all about. Very few people, I feel, ever get to see that type of panoramic view. So if I sort of like do a little bit of comparison with what is an epic story in the past and what is an epic story now, perhaps we can sort of like find our own way about that. So epic storytelling, as you might have realized, is something which tells people about heroic deeds, which allows people to sort of like go into another level of reality, which is a little bit distant from what people conceive of as their lived reality. And in that otherworldliness, there's fantastic creations. You're battling sea creatures, you're finding treasures, you're strong and powerful, you have knowledge, you're able to travel to amazing places and do, absolutely crazy things. And that's sort of like that type of epic storytelling is, of course, an embellishment about people's lives. It would have been a bardic tradition. It would have been about people having an idea about something, let's say about the sack of Troy. Troy being about several hundred years BC. In fact, I think it's probably 1200 BC. So of course you don't have actually some record about the sack of Troy to look back on and see this is the historical detail. You actually have the bardic tradition, which through these amazing epic poems of hundreds or even thousands of lines long, they're in this rhythm. They've got a rhyming scheme, and they're actually sung to some sort of instrument. And so therefore what you're actually listening to, if you're listening to that type of story, is you're listening to a performance. And this performance actually allows you to be elevated, as I would say, into this other world where all these amazing things happen. And of course, they don't actually happen to the ordinary person. They're happening to kings, they're happening to warriors, they're happening to half-gods, they're happening to gods, the labors of Hercules. It's sort of like they're blown out of all proportion, because with each storytelling, with each retelling of the story, it becomes recreated. There are things more that are added to it. It's embellished. It has these adornments. And so therefore what you're actually listening to is something which is fabled and mythic and maybe actually quite far distant than the original story would actually be all about. But yes, you have a question.
No, yeah, it just something popped for me as you were saying that. I know that we think they're embellishments, and I'm not saying that they may not be over time and space, but it could also be, and I think that this relates somehow, it could also be that each person that told a story told it, you know, from their own perspective and their own viewpoint. So they added some texture, some, you know, embellishment
Yes.
to it. And so for me, what that made me realize in this moment is that we can do the same thing.
Exactly so. It's a recreating of the story. Let's bring it forward up to the present times. Now, I would say that the Game of Thrones is an epic adventure, an epic story. What does it have? It's spread out over this vast land mass. It has 7 kingdoms. It has power struggles. It has rape and torture and all this warring nature in it. But it also has scenes of heartfelt romance and, you know, and touching moments where people actually come to understand that they've gone through some sort of like psychological change and transformation. And it's not just about the physicalness, about the landscape. It's about what people find as they're actually walking the landscape from one end of the continents to the other, you know, down from the top, from the north to King's Landing. And they're there to kill Cersei. But in the end, maybe it's not about killing Cersei. Maybe it's about finding some sort of inner resolution to things that you yourself have felt really personal, and you've been threatened, and everything that you can imagine has happened to you. But in the end, it's not about the person who you thought it was about. It's about your own growth and development. And it's about something about the nature of storytelling that was there in the Game of Thrones series, but some people felt at the end it wasn't actually telling the ending that it could have been. There wasn't a resolution for them. So what people have done, as I've seen on the YouTube, they've rewritten the ending for themselves so that therefore their story is complete.
Complete.
It is their story that's now being told. You know, I think that's absolutely perfect. You know, we tell stories, but in the telling of the story, as you say, it becomes changed. It's got our particular slant on it. We've put now a different version of the story in place. That reminds me, there's another epic, which was believed to be the first epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which there is no actual recorded version of, but there are several versions through all these different tablets, hundreds of clay tablets. So what the scholars have found through the tablets is they come up with another tablet, which has got this fragment of poetry on it, and they realize actually that changes the story. That fragment of 16 lines has actually given you a different understanding of the life in those times. And that, I think, is the personal nature of storytelling. It isn't about one thing, your struggle against, let's say, cancer. It is about people's understanding about how they overcome these amazing difficulties that they perceive in their lives, and they find that there's commonality across the entire human race, right? That we're all trying to recognize something in ourselves, and we're all finding ways of expressing that and describing that in so many different forms. You know, we have theater, we have TV, we have radio, we have books. Oh, okay, we have clay tablets. You know, we have video games. You know, it's like there's so many different media now that it doesn't matter how you're expressing yourself, or even doing the Facebook streaming, is that you're putting something of yourself out into the ethers. And someone somewhere is going to find that story, and they're going to perhaps find that they're going to have a different version of that story for themselves.
Yeah. And I think what you're pointing to is, and you've said it actually already, is that we're always telling stories. We're always telling stories, whether we, first we tell ourselves the stories, and then the stories come to life all around us. And what a powerful medium to transform or change or upgrade, or just for the joy of it, try a different story, that in telling the story, you can change the way that you look at things and the way that things occur. Can you talk a little bit about what you've experienced in that aspect with the folks? Because I know that you did a course around, genius writing. What have you noticed about what happens to people as a consequence of storytelling and doing these epic stories?
Well, I'm a good listener. I'll just put that out there for the start. I think for people to be able to reach in and to be able to find self-realization, they've got to have this space. And when we do this, these workshops, these teleclasses, or even like this streaming for today, we come together, we align, because what we're doing together is energetic and it's not rehearsed, and it's consciousness streaming in effect, so that we are creating this whole thing as we go along. So I think to be able to do that successfully, you've got to not only able to speak with some sort of clarity and to speak powerfully, to actually get the fullest expression of the feeling that you want to talk about, the emotion or the storyline, and to be able to work it as you're expressing it, to be able to find the right language for it, to almost like pluck the words out of the air that feel that as they're the right words to actually go into this song that we are singing, going back to the epic song. But also you've got to have the listening. You've got to have this listening in yourself to be able to hear what is being spoken to you by, let's say, your inner voice. So there's got to be some sort of connection taking place. But let's make this an exercise. How about that? How do we do that?
Yes, that's.
So as these epic poets would have done, they would have appealed to the muse. They would have appealed to the divinity. They would have appealed to those who could help them in some way to get to the heart of the matter and to be able to express that in a way that moves the audience. So that's what we're looking to do here. We're looking to find a way in which we can fully connect with what wants to be spoken about. And so we expand who we know ourselves to be as a poet, as a storyteller, as an epic writer. We go beyond all those definitions because we want to be the actual voice of the story itself. And so when we're actually being the voice of the story, we sort of like feel that there's a power which is inside, in which all things are come together, they're connected. And therefore it's not going to be something which you have to grapple for the words. The words are actually presented to you in this beautiful energetic flow, which just seems to emanate from you. And you realize that what you're doing is you are the whole of the consciousness. You are being the whole of the universe, if you like. There's nothing in which you yourself in this moment can't tell any story whatsoever. All you have to do is to reach out and connect and feel the connection just absolutely come right straight into you. And then you can tell the story of Odysseus. then you can tell the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Labours of Hercules, the Game of Thrones. We can tell Adela Rubio's story, but in a powerfully emotive language that takes her from the beginnings of herself up until this present moment, and somehow allows the whole stage of the future to be shown to her. Now that, to me, is the way that a story can be dramatized, or it's really given its fullness of itself. You're not just talking words. You're actually creating worlds. You're creating realities. You're taking somebody's life history, and you don't glamorize it as those epic poets would have done. You actually give it finesse. You give it this beautiful texture with which that person that you're telling that story of, they have been through all these things in their lives, in their life and lives perhaps, and they are such enriched by that moment when they start to feel and realize, oh my God, I have arrived in this place, in this world. And you know what? This world is an exciting world. In this world, I can be internationally networked with a whole audience of perhaps millions of people. And if I put up a video on YouTube, my God, that can go viral. Many people who have never heard my name before suddenly listen to the story that I'm telling, and they feel moved by it because they are being moved by that story in them. And that is where, for me, the power actually resides. So you forget about Odysseus. Yeah, he went through 10 years of hell, but he finally got there in the end. But you don't have to, to use that sort of thinking now that you have to suffer in order to be telling a great story, or you have to be this amazing heroic warrior who's battled sea creatures to be able to come out the other side and this is what I went through. There's nobody there really to actually know whether you actually went through that or not. Homer wasn't there. He was 500 years later. But, he got the story, and he wrote the story about, Odysseus and how he managed to get home. But something about the homecoming is actually beautiful in itself, because people want to find that there is a homecoming to themselves. They want to know that there's meaning and purpose in this world. That there isn't just people dicking around and they're doing all sorts of nonsense. They want to look beyond that smoke screen and to find this realization. We're living in an epic time. You talk now about, what is it that makes it epic? It's the grand scale of things. It's that there's this medical advancements. We're talking now about the possibility of 3D printed organs. That would have been unheard of 50 years ago. And with the computer technology, again, it's gone by leaps and bounds. You have this access to an encyclopedia of knowledge in all sorts of different forms. It's not just combined to text. You've got the audio, you've got the video, you've got the virtual reality that's placed on your doorstep. And so therefore you sort of like go, wow, this is a cornucopia. What am I going to do with all of that? Well, you don't bury yourself in it. Otherwise you don't know the woods for the trees. But what you do realize is that you are gifted. You really are in an epic time, and you're gifted with your own knowing of yourself. Self-realization, self-awareness is, I think, something which is coming more to the fore all the time. And that people can actually just start to pick up pen and paper and start to write a story about themselves, about their lives. And it doesn't matter about the content so much. It's the actual liberation of writing a story, writing your story, writing something which is meaningful, that somehow that transports you into that otherworldly reality that we talked about earlier. And you're suddenly starting to realize, oh my God, what if there's another me in another life who I'm conversing with, and I'm actually probably going to be telling their story, and maybe they're telling my story in their world. It opens up such fantastic, amazing scope that you would never be bored. You would never be bored of telling stories. You know, as I say, about rewriting the Game of Thrones is just the tip of the iceberg. Anything that you are currently immersed within this world, you can rewrite the story of it for yourself. If you don't like the current president, write him out and write another one in. And this guy did this and did this and did this. So you never actually look back to a golden age. You actually create the golden age right now in every way that you possibly can. It doesn't even have to be physical. It can be a virtual world reality. But the thing is, the virtual world reality is just as amazingly as powerful as the physical world reality.
Yeah, you know, you're touching on one of my favorite topics. Reality? Question mark, exclamation, ha 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 ha. I think it's who says it's not all real, you know? All we have to look at is so many books that were stories that have actually, you know, become true, and we've actually gone beyond some of those stories. So the question that was popping up for me as you were diving into, you know, how one might dip into the epic storytelling for oneself was, so when do you use this? Is this like something you do, you know, on an ongoing basis? Is this something that you do, you know, at certain periods in your life? Like, how do you see this epic storytelling? Like, really, like, people, this is a tool. So how do we use this?
Let's just take yourself for an example. Who is Adela Rubio? How do you view Adela Rubio? What are the words that you use to describe her?
Oh God, there's so many, you know, energy, creative, you know, abundant, overflowing, gushing. Those are a lot of the words that come through me and that I've heard from other people. Because even sometimes what I'll notice about my story is that I'm not even cognizant of some of the parts of the story, because to me, it's like, that's who I am. But I know that the story of me has changed so many times. And yet, if I look, you know, as you were talking about them, I looked at, you know, at the peaks and the valleys, right? So many of them. I mean, like, I've written about some of them. There's so many more. There's some that I had forgotten about. And then I start writing about something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. And then just noticing, you know, who I've been in this story. You know, sometimes I've been the villain. Sometimes I've been the hero. Sometimes I've been lost and had no idea who the heck I was. But still, there was something always propelling me through that story. So what I've noticed over time of storytelling so many times, and knowing the value and how that also creates the context for what I experience, is that, you know, there are just, you talked about home. My God, that's such a recurring theme, you know, for so many of us. There are certain themes or topics that are universal to our experience. It doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, how much money you have, and all of the external stuff. None of that matters. There are core things that we all experience and that call us and that we rise to them. You know, so for me, storytelling has allowed me to be able to, first of all, notice these things. You know, I might be thinking I was leading an ordinary life when, you know, life was back in 1975 or whatever, you know, and that I was completely clueless. I don't have the awareness that I have now, but there was stuff going, you know what I mean? There were things going on, and I may not have clued in then, but now I've been able to glean things from then that I was like, whoa.
So what you're doing is you're putting things in different contexts as well.
Yeah.
You're not the same person as you were about, I'd say, in the 70s.
Absolutely not. And the more that I've recognize my commonality and paradox at the same time as the infinite creative nature of not only myself, but of everyone. And that when that's the story you not only tell about yourself, you know, and then the story that you create about the world around you, that is exactly what has happened in my life. I am surrounded, inundated by highly creative people all over the place. And I see how, you know, a version of Adela, a previous version of Adela, you know, just would see absence. Now there's like abundance. It's like, what do you mean? Like, we could do this and we could do this. And mind you, you know, a little earlier, it took me a while to get to this ability to really tell a different story. But it's because I used to think it was a story, all lowercase, as opposed to uppercase, exclamation story, you know?
Epic story.
Exactly. Exactly. How epic is it that just by telling a story differently, you change things? Not only you change things.
I had a conversation with a guy on Sunday, and in the conversation I recorded it, put it on my timeline. He told me that he had gum disease and he had tried all sorts of things over the years, etc. So I said, since we're having this conversation, why don't we have this experiment? To which he readily agreed. In the course of the deep listening and the telling of the story, he found out that he didn't have gum disease, but he had realizations. And then the realizations were that he had carried forward a story from his childhood into the present moment, the story being about sugar, rots your teeth, and gums. So it's like there's a powerful force in us that clings on to these things that we've heard, you know, from way back, and have created a reality around them. So that was a powerful experience from him, and even more so because it lays open this whole thing about, well, maybe all these things that do happen as ailments, as disorders, as diseases, have their basis in some sort of something you were told in your childhood, or something you heard in your childhood, or read in your childhood, and you took it as gospel's truth without questioning it. And so therefore became statement of fact, embedded in the cells, and that's what you have been living with. And I think a great takeaway from that thing was, okay, so that was one belief, one story. I wonder how many other beliefs and stories actually are lurking away in there somewhere. And isn't it time to actually do a little bit of spring cleaning and find out what validity they have in this present moment? So one good thing that realization was, you can just say, out with the old and let's have the new. Everything that I no longer need or require, it goes for me right now on all the different levels, you know, physical, emotional, spiritual, etc. What is the new thing that wants to express itself? What is this new storyline that I'm actually engaged in this very moment, that I can reshape it, that I can give it context, that I can give it more structure, and which I can feel more fulfillment of my life through actually following that story. And, you know, it's like what we know about Odysseus, we came through Homer and the poetic tradition. But Homer has frozen Odysseus in time now. That's the Odysseus that we know, until something else comes along and changes the story of Odysseus. You know, but what we do is we're changing our stories all the time.
Absolutely. And I can see how really giving your energy and attention to your epic story, how that would put you in a new, really amazing story where some of those old storylines would just fall away because they could not exist in that current vibrant creation of your new story. Exactly. I could see that as being like, you know, if you want to take the accelerated pathway to just, you know, bypass a lot of that old unconscious embedded, body embedded stuff that cannot live in this other frequency of story, that I could see as being like one of the zippiest reasons to go for your epic story.
You don't have to take the 10 long year adventure to get home. It's a shortcut.
Yes, exactly. Santari, I know that we talked about that you could lead us through an experience for folks that may want to just embody this whole epic storytelling at an even greater frequency. So can you lead us through that?
Absolutely, sure.
Thank you.
So just take a couple of moments, close your eyes if you want to, feel relaxed. Just line up with all the things that we've been talking about, the amazingness of it, the vibrancy of it, the powerful nature of it. And that is something that perhaps you want to embody more of now, if not fully embody it. So be open to that possibility, that you feel expansive, that your knowing of yourself is perhaps about to undergo a change and a transformation, and that you needn't be concerned about what that might look like, but that your full intention is that it's going to be amazing, that the outcome and the effect of it is going to be amazing in your life. And you dance with the power of it. It's almost like you can feel something moving inside of you. Something as yet that doesn't have any form whatsoever. It is just almost like this wave-like motion. It is very subtle, but you notice it nonetheless, because it is just different from what you have felt even a few minutes ago. And you realize that there's nothing to hang on to, nothing that you need to remember. There's no detail about your life that you need to find, that you need to hold it and fix it, but you actually let it go. That your life is just this beautiful, unwavering, fluid motion. And there's the space for redefinition. The space to be creative. You feel like you're pure poetry. Almost like you're singing yourself. Singing a song of life. And the whole structure of your life as it has been starts to change. Simply by your willingness and your allowingness and your openness. And you don't even have to think about how it might change or what you must do for this to be significant and permanent. And there's a blissfulness. It just presents itself to you. And really, it doesn't matter if you tell a story or not. What's important is that you live this story, this new creation, this new vision of yourself, this new version of yourself. Live it to its fullest. And if you feel moved to, go out in nature and start to sing. Sing to the earth, sing to the sky, sing to the sun. And if you feel moved to write, just take a piece of paper and start to put upon it, this is my new story, my story of my new life. And then just write, without editing, just for the sheer enjoyment of writing, and to see what might come in that writing that you have never seen before. A new relationship with life. A new relationship with yourself. And so it has begun.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Santari. Oh, let's check in. Gina Diane, do you need to check in, love? Do you have any thoughts or questions for Santari?
No, I just was really immersed in, and I haven't quite completely come back, but yes, it was lovely to dance and feel that freedom and to recreate myself and a new story. I think the expression of ourself is so vital to being able to create, and that knowing of ourselves and the perspective that we bring to everything is really amazing that we can change that perspective and then change our stories. So thank you, Adela, and thank you, Santari. That was just wonderful.
I need to listen and then write to that, my new story. That was a really great invitation. I know that for me, Santari, I felt the proportion of my light to physical body changed. So I felt more light body, less matter body. that was really yummy because that's fast.
It felt like I was telling a bedtime story.
Yeah.
And in the morning when you wake up, everything will be different.
Exactly. Oh, that was awesome. Awesome. I know that you've got like some yummy gifts. Yummy gifts. You've got the Genius Writers series that you and Solera did. And it's 12 videos and 12 videos. Anything else you want to say about that?
Just dive right in. I think when I was doing the last maybe 3 videos, it was just like getting bigger and bigger. And, you know, it was an awesome series. And I think we did another series after that. But I think this one is actually, this recording is just on a par with that.
Yeah, good. All right, so it's at genius-writers.weebly.com, and I will, and the password is Genius Flow, and I will post that on the blog post so that if you didn't get that, no worries. I'll post it in the group right away so people have access to it, and then I'll send it via email. And I think I missed that series, so I'm going to have to go check that out. The other thing is if you do you want to tell them a little bit about working with you to get their epic story?
Well, I know that some people need to have someone to talk to in order for the alchemy to take place. And as I say, I'm a good listener. I can also help people get the framework of a story and get it going so that they sort of have something to work with. But I think the beauty of having someone to do this with is that in a way they're helping you to create narrative. And for some people it's difficult to get the words, the textual constructions right, you know, the right words, the feelings that do justice to the story itself. And I think when you have someone who's willing to do that with you, it makes it so much easier. So that's the sort of service that I'm offering. And it is about having conversations, whether it's Skype conversations or Zoom conversations, but you have the energetic. Yeah, it's always like important for me to be able to do this, to set the scene of it. That's why I said I did a little bit of research, found out about epic storytelling first. That set the scene for me. Then I decided, oh, what is it that I really want to say? And what I really want to say comes in the moment. And that can't be rehearsed. And for people to have that sort of collaboration, it is in the moment working together to weave a story and bring it out into life. And then for the story itself to have its own life, I think is a beautiful thing to be part of.
Absolutely, and you're an epic storyteller, so you are perfect for this adventure.
Thank you.
Yes, and so if folks want to take a look, they can go to santarigreen.com/GW-coach, and I will include both of those links, and you will have a magical time. I have worked with Santari. He is super fantastic.
Gorgeous. Amazing. Let me just get the dictionary. Let me get the dictionary here.
I'm running out of words. I'm running out of words. Anyway, thank you, Santari, so much. This was delicious, delightful as always. Thank you for being here and for sharing with my peeps. And Gina Diane, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say that I took the Genius Writing course, and that was what got me going on the novel I'm currently working on. So that helped me. It planted the seeds for me to sprout the story. And it's so great to work with Santari. So,
oh, thank you. Such a pleasure.
Two fans here. All right. Thank you so much for being here with us, and thank you everyone for listening. We will see you in the next Wild Creatrix Cafe. Thank you. Bye-bye, darlings.
Bye for now.
Bye.